Welcome to the Gearwire.com Crosstalk podcast for Friday, December 15th. I'm your host, Mike Payne, and I'm joined by Drew Craig. Hey, Drew.
What's up?
Britton Weatherald.
Hi.
And Dan Augusto. How is everybody doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Awesome.
Might notice we have a new set. Dan and our very own Kyle Smith behind the camera. Hi, Kyle. Worked pretty hard on this, and we're happy with the way that it looks, and hopefully you will appreciate it just as much. Does anybody know what today is?
Friday?
No, actually, today is the 25th episode of Gearwire Crosstalk, the big 2-5. That means Crosstalk Podcast is now able to legally rent cars without paying extra fees. So
That's older than me.
Yeah. So grab a seat and bring your own beer because Crosstalk is going on a road trip through audio.
That was the worst joke I've heard in all 25 episodes. You just topped your whole all-time bad joke list.
Yes.
That was very bad.
All right, so the first stop on our road trip through audio is Windows Vista. Vista's on its way to a PC near you on January 30th of 2007. We're going to take a look at how this will affect PC-based computer recordists and share some of our own heated opinions. Next, we'll be reviewing some cool plugins by Yugo Audio, which is a boutique VST plug developer. We'll check out Ironhead, which is a wild morphing drum synth, and Tunguska, a morphing multi-effect plugin. And last, if you caught Crosstalk episode 24, you got one heck of a scorcher. Live on the air, the Crosstalk crew produced a new bumper outro for the Gearwire videos. We started with nothing and picked a genre out of a hat. What did we pick? Hair metal. Yes, woo, hair metal. I don't know if I've laughed that much during a Crosstalk show, but I surely never had that much fun. This week, we'll be mixing the hair metal bump we recorded in episode 24, live on the air with the help of Blue Cat plugins. Before we get started, we've got to represent Gearwire. Get involved. Shoot us an email at crosstalk@gearwire.com. We've hired a cute blonde secretary to answer your emails, and if you want to perv it up, just send an email our way. Additionally,
You were topping the list more and more. Each and every time, like, it just gets worse and worse. I'm like, man, he can't dig any deeper. A scorcher?
We're gonna get some
Scorcher.
yes,
We're gonna get
you
some
know what?
spam.
When I said scorcher, I was originally going to talk about.
How bad how I sounded like Rick James in heels.
Well, I was gonna tie it to like VD scorcher. You know, but I didn't. See, I could have gotten worse than I did.
I think you just did. Yeah, you just did.
You just dug yourself a grave.
Oh well.
It's a deep
You should be to
grave.
China already.
Well, should I make this my last episode? Should I just leave and get it over with?
No. You want to perv.
I mean, anybody can read off a screen, you know. But anyway, all right. So if you want to send an email our way, that's the moral of that story. Additionally, check out the Gearwire forums, join the conversation, and share the buzz at forums.gearwire.com. And last, if you haven't already, sign up for the Gearwire newsletter. You can find the link at the top right of any page on gearwire.com. So starting off, Windows Vista is on its way. Motu is ready for the release, having already made Vista drivers available for their full line of audio gear.
Pause for
think?
discussion.
Laugh.
done.
So yeah,
Vista, huh?
Yeah.
yeah, we've had some stories up on Gearwire.com. I feel a lot of negativity towards Vista.
I'll say something. I'm a Mac guy myself, but I use Windows primarily because I'm somewhat poor, and it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And I don't really like it. I've been using Windows since I was a child, and it just seems like the functionality has gone down, in my opinion. But as far as Vista goes, my stance on it is we kind of have to wait for it to be out before we can judge whether or not it's going to work or not. I mean, that's kind of how software or OS systems go and software goes. You kind of have to wait till it's out.
I think one of the big things is that they're pushing Vista so hard, and one of the things Windows has traditionally had over Macintosh is that it's a more affordable operating system, or it allows you to get more affordable hardware. And now we're hearing in Vista, you need like a dual core Pentium to do music.
At least 2 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, 2 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
And I personally, Actually, I don't have a dual core Pentium in my home studio. I still have a single core. I'll be updating some point, but and I only have like 1.5 gig of RAM. So I probably would not be up to spec with that.
Right.
Honestly, it's like a few years ago when they released OS 10 for from Mac, it was like, oh my gosh, you need to do this and this. It was a huge headache because nobody released drivers for it. And just it was just a headache for every guy who did recording. I mean, like I am still actually recording on OS 9 when I'm using Mac for my Pro Tools rig because I just did not want to like convert everything over to OS 10. And it's just because it's a huge pain in the butt. But you know, everybody now who has OS 10, I'm sure if you're using like Pro Tools or Logic or whatnot, you're already in OS 10. It's not even something you think about now. Technology is caught up with new purchasers. For all the older cats, updating is going to be this huge problem. But you know, as far as like it was bound to happen. First off, Vista at least is releasing its drivers to everybody in enough time to give audio developers, you know.
Yeah, it seems like Windows is doing a pretty good job of getting the source out to developers so that they can do this, and it seems like the developers in turn are responding by creating these drivers. At least Motu, and there's been a lot more, and there's a lot of reports on these things. But yeah, I remember the switch over to OS 10. I was at university at the time, and we had to do these media projects. Pro Tools would only run in OS X, the version we had. But then we also had to do video stuff. And when we wanted to put the sound to a video, we had to boot up in OS 9, like classic or whatever.
Right.
And just almost every time you start exporting, you'd get a crash. And I'm just like hoping to God we don't have to go into any sort of, old version of Windows to run software.
Well, what's beautiful about Vista actually is that Windows has always done one good thing, and they've always been completely backward compatible. All right. Like Vista's operating system. I mean, like Windows.
This is coming from a guy. You've used Mac mostly, though.
I've used Mac and a lot of Windows.
I remember back when I would play computer video games when I was in grade school. Like we would update when we updated from like a 46SX to a 46DX. Some of my video games wouldn't work, and I was crushed.
Well, I mean, like as far as audio programs are concerned, like I can run old Impulse Tracker software programs that were written for 98. In XP with no problem. And the thing is that like the way that Vista is set up, and this is the positive thing. There's a lot of negative. I'm not dismissing all the negative, but the positive thing about Vista is it will probably be backwards compatible to an extent. All right, not to a complete extent, but to an extent. All right, and it also has this weird architecture where it's going to be seamlessly updating itself in the background whenever you're connected to the internet.
I don't like that.
That's freaky.
I don't like
it.
That.
It is kind of freaky, but it's also
Al?
very convenient because you're not going to have to sit there and heal your Windows rig. It'll do it automatically.
But the thing is, if it's working fine as it is right now, the updates can only risk the state of my machine.
That's true.
Yeah, but if you're running Vista, you're probably going to run into problems with the get-go.
Maybe
probably going to need
to your point about backwards compatibility between 98 and XP. It was seamless.
Yeah,
in my opinion. I mean,
2000 was seamless too.
They did a really good job with that.
Yeah,
but XP wasn't all that different from 98.
It wasn't. It really wasn't.
Or in 2000, like I can't. If someone sat me in front of an XP machine, like that had the classic start menu,
you wouldn't.
And a 98 model, I probably wouldn't notice the difference for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what Windows does really well. I mean, like if they because like remember the Mac thing. Just think about like you have to boot in OS 9. Like you can't run any classic programs in OS 10. Like you cannot.
Yeah, that is all. And also Mac, when they went to the G5, all new peripherals. As far as PCI cards, they went to the PCI-X. I don't think that's really happening. But I mean, when we get to 64, I think new peripherals will be 64-bit.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one other comment I have, basically with my personal opinion, I'm not going to upgrade to Vista on my machine. I have a Pentium 4 3.2 gig, and I don't plan on going anywhere with it. I'm totally happy the way it is, and since I've gotten the machine, I've never ran any of the service updates for Windows. I've always kept it the same since my system began to work the way it is.
Me, I've regressed. I went from Service Pack 2 to Service Pack 1 because Service Pack 2 introduced a lot of problems with media drivers.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, here's the thing, though. This is the main kind of focal point that I'm trying to make is a lot of musicians like us and recording people like us will stick with their machine the way it is because it's not economically affordable to go, I'm going to go buy a new computer. I'm going to do all these upgrades to it just to get to Vista, just to get minimal feature. You know, it's like you just want your DAW to record the way it's supposed to record. That's what you want.
And that's why I think that many of us may stay exactly where we are now. I will move to Vista, but only when I get a new machine.
Yeah, exactly. You will do it when it's required.
To that, when you were mentioning the specs that is needed to run Vista, it might actually be a good thing that the specs are so high that you need such a strong machine to run that, because 2 years down the line in running Vista, you know, you can really take advantage of all that it.
I've been reading up on some of the advantages that Vista brings, and of course there's security advantages, but then pretty much everything else is just like GUI. You know, it's graphical stuff, usability stuff. I don't need that as a power user of Windows.
Right.
And this brings up an important point that I have not seen anywhere. I mean, someone probably brought it up, but I haven't seen it. But there is actually a video on Gearwire.com and also an audio interview with Bill Pashik, president of Rain Engineering, Rain Recording Computers, and he you know, he works with the Microsoft guys, like all the bigger companies do,
right?
And he is saying that basically Windows Vista, you guys, Windows x64, that's the architecture for 64-bit computing for Microsoft, and basically. For one reason or another, Microsoft didn't want to push this as hard to its developers. And so people were waiting for Vista to come out before they released their 64-bit drivers. And the thing is that Vista is basically built upon the skeleton of Windows x64 with just a bunch of GUI updates. And it'll take up more space. And I think the answer, according to Bill Pashik, is... you know, Windows x64 for media people, you know, because it's going to be more, it's going to require less resources of your computer. So you can put all of those processing resources towards, you know, processing your media, towards running VSTs. And it supports, I also, another thing, it supports, you know, tons of RAM. And I think they haven't done this on a personal machine, but like in their labs, he mentions they have like 128 terabytes of RAM running on like one of their, you know, liquid cooled machines. You know,
holy crap!
Yeah, I really wonder what the market share for what the market share of recording kind of based applications for computers are right now, because a lot of it sounds like, you know, this is a brilliant idea. Hey, have a media based, you know, version of Windows for all the people who do video.
That's what they're saying. That's what Bill Pashik is saying. What x64. I mean, it's not necessarily what x64 is supposed to be, but that's ended up the role it's playing.
Okay.
Because it's basically a bare bones version of Vista.
Yeah.
And before we move on, I wanted to. You mentioned how Windows Vista is basically a GUI update. And not entirely, but that's one of the main selling points.
In essence, you know, that's you could say that, you know, you could classify it as a GUI update.
I'm running XP at home, and if you looked at my machine, you would think it's Vista. I have a bunch of skin updates. I've got a Mac dock at the bottom, and I can scroll through my apps just like that.
I've heard about that.
And it's not taking like a significant toll on my processor at all to run this, and my PC looks sweet.
But I think you might have some performance and you know, heightening if you were to get rid of those stuff. You might find that you could, you know, render quicker or run more VSTs. But you're running Pro Tools anyway.
I'm running Pro Tools, and I've not had a single problem. Yeah, it's been fun.
I mean, at least they're not changing their whole language architecture like the OS 9 to OS 10 sort of thing.
Yeah, with like AU.
So basically, the whole problem with OS 9 to OS 10 is that they changed the whole architecture.
The skeleton, if you will.
The skeleton. From Unix, from their previous to Unix or an OpenBSD sort of thing. And this is nothing new. I mean, evidently there's, you know, HP has developed the same Unix-like platforms. They're not classically Unix, but, you know, they're...
Yeah, it's sort of like calling Italian and Spanish like romantic languages as to calling BSD and what is AIX is another one.
That's a very good analogy.
Unix,
Yeah, so, I mean, like, that change, though, really... I mean, it offered for a lot of stability... advantages, but during the transition of it was a huge problem, especially with the audio units drivers, the way that they did audio. They got rid of the open OMF, you know, the little MIDI driver implementation because of all this changes in the Unix system. So